Hey everybody, Sam here with the UMKC Block School and Rainier Institute for our Student Venture Series podcast. I'm here today with Thayer for our recent episode 6 of the podcast presented by Startland News. We're excited to talk to Thayer today. This is going to be a really interesting entrepreneurial and arts conversation. And so would want to start out with just really learning about what you have going on. You've got some really awesome things you're building out in the West Bottoms, and you're really kind of positioning some spaces that can be a high resource to the community writ large here in Kansas City as arts and business people. So tell me a little bit about yourself, and talk about what you're building down in West Bottoms.
Sure. I'll just start with a brief biography. I graduated KU 2009 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Printmaking and a minor in art history. Right after graduation, it was 2009. We all know what happened in 2008. So was looking for internships all around the country, just Googling print shops and saying, do you need help? One print shop actually got back to me. It was the Lawrence Lithography Workshop in Kansas City. Called me up, asked me if he said, I know you were asking for an internship, but you want to get paid. You want a real job? And I was like, I do actually, yes. And my parents were happy about that too. So worked there, started as just a press assistant. Then I did, by the time I left, was there for about 8 or 9 years. Left as a edition printer and basically operations shop operator. Bounced around for a little bit. And the thing about printmaking, if you don't have access to a printing press, you're kind of not a printmaker anymore. And printing presses are expensive to buy. They're expensive to house. And a lot of people, when they graduate, they have grand ambitions to own a press, not a print shop. So they, pool their money with a couple of friends, buy a press, and they're like, all right, wait, we all live in studio apartments. We need a space. And then they go buy a space. And then it's like, well, now we have overhead. So let's just teach classes or something, or have other people come in. And then they're like, well, now we have to worry about safety if somebody, degloves themselves on this intaglio press, or if somebody hurts themselves this, that, or the other way. And then I don't want to teach. I would have gone to grad school if I wanted to teach. So what am I doing? And then, it quickly dissolved. It turns from something they wanted to do to make art to now it's a business, and they didn't want to be business people. And so it dissolves. And, that happens more or less fairly regularly. I've seen it happen 3 or 4 times since I graduated. And I didn't really, that wasn't a good situation for me. And at the time when I graduated, I was like, I didn't want to own a business or do any of that. I wanted to use their presses, and, didn't want to have that burden of ownership. But, when I left Lawrence Litho, I had this problem again of, I didn't have a press, and I didn't have something, I didn't have this place to make work, and I didn't have people around me who were also making work, and having that, I don't think it matters what kind of artist you are. You're a creative person yourself. If you're not around people that are generating things and making things, you can feel that in your bones. It's just, nobody needs an echo chamber, especially when that echo chamber is just in here. So I was looking around and going there's no place for me to make art anymore. There's no place for me to make prints anymore. I'm not a printmaker anymore. And then I was looking around going there was 15 people in my cohort around there when I graduated college. And so I went to KU. Just around Kansas City, there's KU, UMKC, CMSU, and KCAI. So that's 4 institutions with solid art programs. And when they graduate, if they're printmakers or, something else, they can either stay here and not become printmakers, or they can stay in academia, which is good for some people. I was very much done when I was a undergrad, in spite of the fact that I went to grad school. Or they can move to the coast. And I was seeing excellent talent moving to the coast because that's where the jobs were. That's where the security was. That's where not security. That's where the presses were. Um, I'm like, I want that. I want these people here. I want this talent here in Kansas City, and I want that community here. I'll talk more about community later, but that is a huge thing. With both printmaking and ceramics in Kansas City is a good art city, but I think more than anything else, it's a ceramic city, largely by what KCAI started doing in like the 60s and continues to do now. It's just like an excellent resource for specifically ceramicists and artists in general. So around 2017, I had the idea of like, okay, I know how to operate a press. I've been doing the basically OM and Lawrence Litho for a little under a decade. I know how to do, how to order, how to check material, how to maintain the machines. I just need a space and some money. So I wrote up a proposal. I Googled my first, how to write my business plan, did a very charming 10 pages, and submitted it to a owner of a large arts institution. I got two interviews with them, and, they liked my work, but they just, didn't have either the time or the space for me. But, how my mind works is like, well, it must be my fault. What did I do wrong? Like, what did they know me, they've met me before, they see me work before, like they know I can operate this press, like operate this space safely. Like, what is it? It must be like, I don't have the experience. I have the experience operating a physical space. I don't have an experience operating a business. And then I started really looking at education again to get, some business education to get me to get that lack of experience. I can transfer it into an education. And, I looked around. I was a KC grad. I looked around at KU, or not KC, a KU grad. I looked around at KU. I looked around UMKC and a couple other places. This was also right before the pandemic, I think. So it was like, I don't know anything about online, but I could do online. Then pandemic hit. I'm like, well, it looks like I'm doing nothing but online. And I actually chose UMKC over KU. They were both great programs. They were both priced pretty much the same. But the thing that UMKC really emphasized was networking and community. And I knew that was something I lacked and something I needed to develop. And, they were talking about like, we have these services and this and that and the other thing. And like, we have community and we have networking. And when I started taking classes, it was all online. And even then they were just, every class, at least once a week, we had a breakout where we did group work. And, my foolish insular art mind was like, oh, I don't want to work in a group. I want to work by myself. I do great work by myself. And then, the first day I worked in the group, I was like, oh, I see. Like, this person is like, I can already tell this person is good at this task. And I know I'm good at this task. And I know this person is, I can see this person is good at this task. I'm like, because we don't know each other, we're coming to this thing where it's just like, there's no clout and there's no like, I know this and I'm going to show these people this. It's just like, we're all in an education, we're all learning. And so it's just an honesty of activity and just like, let's figure out how we can all work together, which I really didn't, I didn't learn that in undergrad. I didn't learn that in my, in my functionary jobs. It's just like, I do a task, not we problem solve together so much. And I really love that. And I got really activated by that. And then, all through that, I got thirsty for that. Then my second to last semester, I'm sure it was talked about before. I just wasn't paying the greatest amount of attention. One of the teachers or visiting lecturer talked about e-scholars, and I was like, oh no, what's this now? And like I talked to a teacher about it, and they were like, oh, that's like, if you have an idea for a specific idea for a business, you should take this. You need to take this. And and it was eye-opening because it was exactly, it was excellent that it was the culmination of my master's degree, because it was exactly, it was the reason, like I came to the master's program for this job, for this idea, to strengthen my functional understanding of how to do business. And then to have this this program where it's like that idea you have, that the only reason you're here is for this idea. We can help you, not make you. Ain't nobody doing anything for me. We can give you the tools to execute your vision better and more smartly and more intelligently and more robustly than just, flailing about thinking, like having an idea about it. Another thing it helped me to do is look at it just very soberly. So many ideas are, I'm sure you've had this yourself, like so many of your ideas are your baby, your special thing, and you want to protect it and grow it, but sometimes that protecting and growing just stymies it and kills it. So it really helped me to look at it soberly and look at it in a way that's just like, will it work or won't it work? These are the several ways it will work, and these are the several ways that it could fail. How do we address that? Because there's certain, there's so much things that like are easily addressable and clear. And then once you get past those, just operations again, once you get past those big things, you'll find other smaller things that are still blocking the flow. And then once you get that, there's still always something blocking the flow. But if you can get rid of the huge things, and I think that's what e-scholars did.
Well, and I think you're tapping into like a common archetype of the artist, which you see a lot of, which is, I don't, if I'm an artist, especially younger, I have this sort of thought process, or some of them, or maybe a lot of them, that I have this product that I want to make and I don't really care who likes it. And it just is what it is. And I made it because I like it. And it's like, that's a totally fine approach for art.
Yeah.
But not for a business, right? Like if you want to build a company, it does matter what people think. It does matter how it's represented. It shouldn't have to be some, exact process in terms of what you see in your mind isn't necessarily going to be the most successful product out in the open, right? And so we see that a lot of times in marketing and design, and UI, UX. It's like, oh, well, the video was great. Like the client just didn't get it, or the customer's just not educated enough, or, oh yeah, this application is amazing. They just don't know how to use it. And it's like, okay, well, they don't know how to use it. Then guess what? They're not going to use it, and you're not going to have users. So I don't know, like you can argue and say that, all you want about how smart or not smart they are, but if they're not going to use your product, like you're the not smart one, because you're not going to make any money on it.
Yeah.
And so the posturing is one of those things that you have to pull away from. And I think that's what's really important with these scholars, is like it pulls you away from just constantly perfecting and trying to perfect these ideas in your mind, bringing it out into the sandbox and saying, break it over and over again and see what happens. Like keep trying to break it, keep trying to move it forward, because you can't, one of the students that I talked to recently was like, expressing his desire to try and avoid as much failure as possible through e-scholars. And I said, the way I would think about it is less of that and more of that your task in e-scholars and in undergrad and even in grad school sometimes is to fail as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Because the more you can fail, the more learning you're going to do, right? And so instead of, you should embrace that failure, especially when you're in a safe sandbox at a university, because when you're failing in the real world, it hurts just as much emotionally and more so in a real tangible way.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how, and I have some thoughts on all the stuff that you've been mentioning, but I'd love to, give the viewers an idea of like what it is that you're building now, down in the West Bottoms to really solve this problem of access to printing. Because I think there's a lot of different, things that we can touch on and why it's important. But talk to me about, the last year since you've gotten out of e-scholars, you've, started doing some movement down in the West Bottoms to create this resource that you wanted to have before, and now you're becoming the one that's providing it. So maybe tell me a little bit about, just why you decided to start that in the West Bottoms, like how it's going, how you're feeling about where, the direction of what you're building.
Sure. I mean, as far as why West Bottoms, it is, honestly, it's cheap.
Yeah.
For right now, it's cheap. It's a place that is up and coming as an arts area. There's, there's an entire building, the Wholesome building, that has basement to, I think, third floor is just artist studios and gallery spaces. Gallery Bogart, Monaco's down there. Blip Coffee Roasters, which
Yep.
yeah.
Very good.
And there's right beside our building, so I'm in the Hobbs building, basement of the Hobbs building on 1427 West 9th Street. Just immediately beside us, there was it was abandoned, was a warehouse, and now they just turned it into loft space. And actually, one of my studio renters didn't know me from Adam, didn't know my space, didn't see me on Instagram. They were just walking by, and her boyfriend looked down in the basement and was like, "Is that a litho press?" And then they were telling me they were like trying to sneak looks in. It's just, which was very cool. But they live right beside it, and so it's really starting to be redeveloped. It's really starting to be, and then Stockyards and Haw Gallery on the south side of 12th Street. It's just really starting to reemerge. I grew up in the Kansas side of Kansas City, but in high school, me and my friend would take our for our photo class, take our cameras down to the West Bottoms and take all pictures of graffiti and all the other stuff, and just seeing that like 22 years later, it's like it's literally like springtime when you've seen those peonies, like those purple shoot peonies, just like emerge and go into huge giant blooms. That's what's really starting to happen with the West Bottom. So it's an excellent place to be, and it's, as I said again, it's still relatively cheap. We have 3,000 square feet for I think under 1,000. Yeah, I don't think I know. I just don't want to say them from under $1,000, which is unheard of. I've been looking for space for a while, and it's around $12 a square foot a year, which is for our space just not there yet. And so West Bottoms is excellent. West Bottoms is growing, and West Bottoms is a good place to be.
Yeah.
Plus there is all that the charm of the industrial and the brick and everything else, and we are in the basement of the building, but it's still just, it's a beautiful basement.
Yeah, no, for sure. And how has it been in terms of, getting the business starting to move, trying to really make a name for yourself, really build it out? Like, what's that experience been like so far?
It's probably as expected. It's not, I would love for it to be, and I'm sure every business owner really would love it to hit the ground running with, everything going, and so our main offerings are classes, access passes, monthly and weekly access passes, and studio rents. And right now, we opened in June, and so we've been doing around 2 classes and 1 workshop a month, 2 printmaking classes. We're just at the very tail end of my beginning relief printing class and beginning screen printing class. That's what we're doing in March, and a bookbinding class, which actually is today. I need to check and see about that. So we started with just the programming, just to get some footing and get some advertising in, and it's been going slow and steady. I'd like to have more people in and more people doing access passes, but right now it is nice and slow. We opened up private and semi-private studio spaces in January, and that has been the most popular thing. We are definitely getting more traction with that, and through that we are definitely going to be, I've already started seeing more interest in the space, because the one big thing, we want to grow a community, and having the studios already down there, studio renters are starting to talk and tell people like, "Oh, come on down. I want more people down here, so you come on down." So getting other people to advertise for you is always fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. And what are your your perspective on, I think what's important is, obviously marketing, and it sounds like, obviously the business is just now really taking a lift. So I think, obviously it's it's easier said than done to be like, hey, it'll take time,
Yep.
right, to get it out there. But,
Yep.
really, like, you guys are, really just hitting the ground running, and it sounds like things are manifesting. I think the more important part is like the problem that you're trying to solve.
Mhm.
So eventually you're gonna hit your market that like needs that access. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what we're getting at is like you found an opportunity where there are artists that have the desire to create and don't have access, and you're creating that access pipeline for them. And so keeping in mind that like however many years have gone by that access to printing equipment has probably been somewhat constrained,
Mhm.
all of a sudden now you're popping up on the scene. Well, it's going to take a little bit for people to be like, oh wait, what? Now we have printing solutions now
Yeah.
that we can actually activate. And so I think it's really like important that you spent those 10 years building the actual understanding of the systems themselves, because a lot of people try and do it the other way where they're like, I'm just going to think of a business idea and make it, and like I'm going to try and make money. And it's like, a lot of times I tell people that that can work, but it still takes time.
Yeah.
Whereas you went after what you loved and what you're passionate about, and it took you time to like build that experience book. But then once you had that knowledge, you're like, cool, now I just need a couple business class, a little bit of here and there, little mentors, maybe a business partner or two, or, a business plan, and you're able to actually move it forward. And when you start hitting your success, it'll be a much easier positioning to scale, right?
Yep.
Because people who don't love what they do or aren't connected in a passion sense to their projects, when you start seeing scale and you start not only positively but also like difficult parts of scale,
Mhm.
it becomes almost unbearable. So I think it's really important, and I'd love to touch really, on what your thoughts are in terms of access, right? Because I think a lot of people, we have phones, we have, all this ability to make music and make art and stuff like that. So people feel like access to creative works is rapidly increasing, which in a certain sense it is. But for the physical arts, for the fine arts, you could argue that the actual access is going down because there's such a shift to the digital spheres, right? So there's less access to, there's no newspaper printing, right? Like, so talk to me about like access for fine art students, for printing, people of the printing profession. Like, how important is it that they have that access when it comes to, you said they're going to the coast? Like, why is it important for us to keep them here? And how are you able to, see that vision unfolding?
So our facility, it opens up access to all, any artist who has some sort of experience. We also teach classes to build some experience in there so they can work either independently or under supervision.
Mhm.
And, our big point of access is, when I went to KU, we had around, I want to say 25, 30 presses
Mm.
just in the space. And that's not even considering the letterpress space. And we had, probably 500 square feet of table space just for printmaking.
Mm.
And then, when you graduate, unless you want to be a teacher, which, um, if you're an adjunct professor in the arts, good luck, because you're going to be that till you die. Now, um, there hasn't been, there's a couple small places. There's some people, for small tabletop presses, it's relatively accessible. It's $500 for a small press. And you can do decent sized work with that, and you can do, small work with it. One of my renters, the first renter actually I had for the private studio spaces, I'd known her for a long time. She does linoleum cut relief prints, and she does, she's been doing small stuff in her home studio. And, when I talked to her, she was like, I want in this space. And I was like, don't you already have a press? She's like, I don't have a press. I don't have a press that can print 4 by 8 foot things. And like that Conrad press prints 4 by 8 foot things. I want to make bigger stuff, and I want to make more ambitious stuff. And I want a community that I can make stuff around. Which is another great thing about the access is, so, we have 20 presses in our space, and the closest place you can get to that breadth of presses is Iowa City, Iowa, called PS1. It's a co-op in Iowa City. So that's, I want to say 6 hours away. The next closest place is, I'm going to say, Lawrence Arts Center. which is an excellent resource in Kansas for the arts. They teach classes, and they have a limited access to printmaking space, but they have like maybe 3 presses. Then maybe in St. Louis, there might be 1 or 2 presses. I know that somebody just opened up a letterpress shop there. But again, in St. Louis, you have WashU, you have SLU, I think 1 or 2 other spaces that are excellent art programs. And again, they have Island Press in WashU, which is a printer publisher like Lawrence Litho. But then you graduate, and all those presses, all that equipment, all those ways of making art, and all that community vanish. And sometimes you can have the community outside of the press if you're making friends, but there's so much in a community access space, in a community use space, where you are, especially process-based stuff, like, and I go back to ceramics because Kansas City is a ceramics community. You're working on an intaglio plate, and you're like, something's going on with this. I don't know what's going on. And then the person right beside you working on the other intaglio press is like, hey, I see you're having a problem. Have you tried A, B, and C? I'm like, well, I tried that, and you tried this. I'm like, oh, I haven't tried that. And then you're talking about a process, and then you're going to be talking about the content of the art, and then you're going to be talking about the execution, and then you're going to be talking about life, and then you're going to be talking about that. Oh, did you see that restaurant just down the street? And I'm like, no, I didn't. Well, let's go let's go get a beer after we finish cleanup and talk about the process or something like that, or the art city, or do you see that new show, or do it grows that community, which the community was a big thing. When you graduate, there's this thing where it's like, I have something that I'm missing.
Yeah.
I can see with my eyes and I can feel with my hands that big old press. I don't have that press anymore, and that's what I'm missing. And then when I got to Lawrence Litho, it was just, me and the owner basically standing on either side of the press producing work. And there was still something, and he was very generous to let me work after hours on the press by myself. But there was still something, just like, it's me, him, and the secretary, and I'm friendly with all of them and friends with them still. But it's not a community. We're not engaging the same way. And it took me 5 or 6 years before I was like, oh wait, it's because I'm just talking about executing a print. It's a job I'm doing. I am not being generatively creative in a way that I want to be, and I'm not interacting with people who are also being generatively creative. So granting access to a space and facilitating access to the creation of art is a way to create and facilitate access to a community, which is kind of turned into what I actually want to do, and just the presses and the space is a way to facilitate that.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think you're touching on something that's important to business leaders, entrepreneurs, people that are just working at, regular, 9 to 5s as well. And then artists in general, which is like, you need community, you need community feedback, you need, COVID showed us that. It's like, 6 months of Zoom was fine. And then afterwards you're like, oof, gosh, I got to get out of the house. And so I think for artists in particular, I know there's a lot of data out there in terms of why co-working is successful, but one of them for artists is like, when you're around other artists, like, you produce more and you produce better. Like, it's the same for business leaders, same for software engineers. Like, that's why you see hackathons. That's why you see all those things. So I think, it'd be really good to get your kind of final thoughts as we kind of come to a close about why you think community is so important for artists. Like, I think what you're tapping into is like, you're creating an access point for people to create prints and to actually do their job, but also like the knock-on effects of that are like, they find friends, they find community, they find, spiritual or, physiological well-being from those moments. So like, talk to me about why you're starting to see that be something you're more interested in beyond just being an access point for the press. Is like, why is community so important for you as an artist and now as a business owner?
Yeah. Well, community, I mean, there's a 30-mile view that community, it builds not to be so mercenary, but community builds continuous use, and continuous use builds continuous income. So as a just as a dispassionate business thing, community is good for business. As a human being, we are all social animals, and we're all created and born and raised and developed in social situations. And we, as you said, we exist to be social, and we are better social, like psychologically, emotionally, individually, and as groups, together as a community, as a social community. And especially with processes, process-based art and process-based anything, if you have a very technically rigorous media, creating a community creates a wellspring of knowledge and a reservoir of knowledge. And that creates a culture around that community and around that sociability of not just understanding of the press or understanding of materials, but understanding history. And creating a community and creating a society, you need a history, and you need to create ways to communicate and ways to disseminate that knowledge and keep that knowledge, consistent, and develop it better and develop it more. And it all comes back to, like, if you don't have access to the space, if you don't have access to the presses, then you don't have that generative structure to grow the community. It's like when they grow synthetic organs, they have that 3D printed structure, and then the cells just naturally grow around it.
Yeah.
You need that 3D structure is the print shop.
Yeah.
And then the cells are the individual people that create the space and create the community and create the culture around it. So you're eventually creating an entire, microculture around printmaking and around all from just saying, like, I have this expertise, I have this understanding and competency of running a press, and I want other people to come in and use it.
Yeah.
Just that's the very basic thing. I got this thing. I can make myself useful to you. Let me make myself useful to you.
And on that note, if someone was interested in learning about it, or, they're an avid printer themselves, where would they be able to find you guys at?
Sure. On Instagram, I'm at Greenhouse Print Space. On the web, I am at greenhouseprintspace.org. My personal Instagram is Red Shorts Bindery. All of those are all one word. You can email me directly at greenhouseprintspace@gmail.com. Or you can, make time to, I'm usually there on Wednesday and Thursday evenings, and I'm trying to make time to meet Tuesday all day at 1427 West 9th Street, 64101 in beautiful historic West Bottoms.
Well, that was like a lot. You had to recite a lot of like technical information there, so you crushed it. But thank you for, sharing your story and talking about, your, experience, going from, I was actually also KU undergrad. So I didn't do master's here, but I did half my undergrad at KU, then came to UMKC. And I think what pulled me here as well was a lot of what you talked about, the network, the community, a lot of the intangibles that, you don't necessarily always see from a university. So it's exciting to hear like how you kind of transitioned from KU, took your 10 years of experience, came here, got your master's, went through eScholars, and now within just a year, you're already moving on the business idea. And I think it's it's an important lesson for people to know that, like, it's not always you get an entrepreneurship degree and then the next year you're an entrepreneur. Like, sometimes you start with an arts degree and you do that for 10 years and you come back to the entrepreneurial table. So I think this is a really important lesson for people to remember, is that the path isn't always straight. And frankly, a lot of times, like, you don't know that you're going to be a business owner or business leader or own your own business or work in a company. And it really doesn't matter. You just have to be focused on the things that you actually care about and are interested in, because whether you're working at a company or you're working for yourself or you're working with a team, if you don't love what you do, you're not going to find value in that over a long course of time. And frankly, there's too much stipulations and kind of stereotypes around, like, you have to be an entrepreneur, you have to have your own business, which is just not the case. You really just have to work on stuff you care about, because there's plenty of people that work at Apple that could be entrepreneurs. There's plenty of people that work at Google that could be entrepreneurs, but they're working at the best companies in the world, making great products for the rest of the country, because they're working as a part of someone else's startup, right? So I think it's a really important note, and it's also great for artists to remember that, like, if you want to build businesses and you want to build ideas and you want to go out into the world and make money, and you're not focused on strictly being an artist, then you have to really figure out a way to kind of pull away from the ego around your ideas and your concepts and be really open to learning about how to work in a group, like you said, how to learn from people, how to take in feedback, and how to continue to mold and change your idea to make it where people actually want it. Because just because you love it doesn't necessarily mean others will too. And that's not because they don't like you or don't like your idea. It's because that's what we owe to each other, is to create things that not only you find value in, but other people do as well. So thank you so much for sharing your story today, Thayer. I think it was great, and I'm excited I'll be down there next time. Now that the summer is coming back, or spring, I'll be down there and I'll have to check it out. But thank you guys so much for checking out this week's episode, and we'll see you on the next one.